What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me we have some more RPG horror stories. I want to tell you a little bit of a fun fact about me. Nothing about RPG horror stories for today, but instead about me, Morrow. I was in a VR chat of roleplay. I don't want to give away the name of the roleplay itself, but I played a specific wood elf, a mercenary. His backstory is pretty lengthy, but basically, long story short, he was found under a horse cart that was turned over, and there were a lot of people dead, and it looked like a battlefield happened. Completely forgetting anything about himself, including his name, any sort of memories, any sort of childhood memories that he had. So once he crawled from under the horse cart, he was battered, bruised, but he just kept on walking until he ran into a group of mercenaries. That group of mercenaries became his family, and ever since then he just kind of stuck with them and turned out to become a really solid bounty hunter. I had a lot of good memories playing this character. It was really fun. The cast and crew were amazing, wonderful. I just kind of didn't have time to continue him, so his story sort of ended without a real ending. But you know what? I could always take him over to D&D and actually play his story out in a D&D game, which I think would be kind of cool. Anyway, enough about me and my characters and all my things. Let's get some RPG horror stories for today. DM acts like a mean girl instead of just saying that I'm not a fit for their campaign. Early this year, I was supposed to play in a campaign of Curse of Strahd, if the username was any indication. However, some drama got in the way of that, and in hindsight, it's pretty funny. So here I am to regale you the tale of how and why I didn't get to play Curse of Strahd. Some names for our players: DM, the Dungeon Master, duh. Barb, short for Barbarian, me and her played in a campaign together before, this info is important. Art, short for Artificer, another player who told me some additional details after the fact. Fiend, not a player but still in a D&D server and happy to hear some choice tidbits from DM. In the beginning, all was well. I was one of the first people DM asked to join. Hadn't played D&D since a previous group had fallen apart, so getting to play again was exciting. And it was a gothic horror? Hell yeah, sign me the frick up! I was all ready and had the perfect character for the game, an Oathbreaker paladin with an obsession, the dark magic. I was so hyped to play her. However, before we get to character sheets, DM sends all the players consent forms. Now I'm totally cool with consent forms, especially for something dark and gritty like Strahd. The first issue was that this was not a Curse of Strahd specific in term of content warning. It was a general form that just had most if not all uncomfortable topics you could run into the campaign. So, not exactly a great start, but okay. The DM had mentioned wanting to play this accurately, and then this was not going to be a game for the faint of heart. That's fine. I love a spot of guts and gore in my gothic horror. One of our players dropped after hearing about how gritty and edgy this Curse of Strahd was going to be, and more power to her. This also means that we had 4 players instead of 5, which was okay in my opinion, but the DM wanted a party of 5. Again, also not a problem. But then I get a message from the DM. Hey, can I add Barb in? Like, would you be comfy with that? See, Barb and I had a history, as I alluded to the previous. So of course, my dumbass goes, yeah, sure, I didn't see the issue. Because I was a massive people pleaser at the time. Still trying to break that habit, unfortunately. It is a really hard thing to break, dude. It is a really hard thing. I remember at one point, I was basically nothing short of a doormat. I did a lot of things with people, and I would stay up like crazy nights and help people out with their stuff, whether it be like a schoolwork or something they're doing in a job and whatever. Yeah, no, it's... You gotta have boundaries. You have to have boundaries with these sort of things, dude. And now look at me, a tiefling, reading RPG horror stories, and not afraid to tell somebody to fuck right off. Look at me. I've grown so much. Anyway, let's continue. In reality, there was an issue. I haven't spoken to Barb since our old group dissolved, and all the drama that came with. That's a different story though. In short, I was scared Barb hated me because we didn't leave off on good terms. Oh well, I could play with her in a campaign. It's fine. Everything is fine. Another red flag in hindsight came in from the DM, saying that there would be no leniency for my mental health getting in the way of sessions, and that they wouldn't be pausing to let me decompress if I get overwhelmed. And that's fine. I'm not expecting to be accommodated in every game I play in. I'll just have to deal. This is fine. Everything is fine. They did repeat the boundary of them multiple times to me, saying they won't stop for me and that I'll have to manage, which I found a bit weird. But I know I can be forgetful at the best of times, so I figured the repetition was so I didn't forget by game time. That or they're trying to hint towards something, you know? And whenever your friends tell you about something like, oh, something's really scary, you know, it's kind of like they're trying to almost enhance a sort of like description. It's like, yeah, I get it. Something's really scary. I get it. I get it. From the title, it feels like maybe the DM was trying to sort of be like, I'm not stopping for your fifis or something. You better know that for sure. Almost as if like trying to encourage you to basically quit or something. I'm not fully sure. I don't know what the angle for the DM is, but we'll find out. Oh yeah, did I mention that we haven't started the campaign yet? No? Well, the campaign never starts. If you want an indication as to where this is going, the third strike was when I got a message from the DM. Hey, are you sure you're gonna be okay with Strahd? Yeah, why wouldn't I be? Well, some players are worried about you. They don't think you'll be able to handle it. No, I'm pretty sure I'm fine. I know what I'm getting into. By the way, who was worried? Oh, sweet saloon above. That was the worst thing to say. Anyway, I can't say that. What? Side note, they said it like they were under some not-existent NDA. I don't remember the exact words, but I do remember getting anxious and pestering them about it. To be fair, if it was another player that had the issue, foreshadowing, I'd like to talk it out with them. Let them know I'm going to be okay so we don't go into the game on an awkward footing. Eventually, DM confessed that it was Barb who was concerned, and they even were so gracious as to offer to mediate the conversation while Barb and I sort our campaign concerns out with each other. I should note, I thought the issue was that I wouldn't be able to handle the content of the campaign. I only have a couple of squicks. Remember this for later, actually, so it should be no problem. And I said as much in the group chat DM made for Barb and I. The content was not the problem. Now, while I can't recite the whole rant Barb went on for guidelines' sake, I can give you a lovely reader's the skinny. Basically, Barb said how much of a terrible player and person I was, how I hogged the spotlight, and how I couldn't handle our previous campaign, let alone Curse of Strahd. And also, she didn't want to see me ruin this game too, or hurt her friends any further. The friends in question are our mutual friends. Friends that I'm still good friends with, believe it or not. It was bad to say the least. Though luckily for me, the mental preparations for the campaign came in handy after all. Managed to stay calm enough to defend myself from the bad player allegations and tell her to frick off in regards to the previous campaign that fell apart. However, my strength didn't last long, as the DM in direct messages if they thought I would last. I got the most plastic polite "no, sorry" I've ever read, and decided to drop the campaign. Too tired of the crap to care about what I was missing out on. That's it. That's the end, right? But wait, there's more. There's still 2 whole characters to introduce. Before we continue with the story, this is some really strange way to try to push a player out of this, and especially for the DM. Why would the DM just be like, no, you probably wouldn't be able to handle my campaign. You should probably leave. Dude, the player already said, I can handle it. And then said twice now, I can handle it. And even third time, yeah, I can handle it, DM. Shut the f up. Let's play already. It's just so weird. It really feels like a Mean Girls kind of thing. Like, but at the same time, I feel like in this situation with how much weird actions they did for both Barb and the DM, and probably other 2 characters introduced, this is probably a bullet dodge. But let's continue with the story. So some time passes and I'm recounting the above to some friends, Art and Fiend. And the 2 of them join in with some details I had known before. Art was another player, and they told me that DM had, around the time they messaged me, Strike 3, asked them if I would last a session. DM's words. They later informed me that DM had asked all the other players that question, and the DM pressured Barb into her insane freaking rant in my general direction. Holy crap, if they didn't want me as a player, that is so unnecessarily complex. Way to make a worse situation by trying to avoid a mildly uncomfortable chat. Then Fiend chimed in and oh boy! Remember when I said I only had a couple of squicks? One of those squicks is discussions of pregnancy. Oddly specific, I didn't expect it to come up, but I made sure DM knew about it when we got to the consent forms. Apparently, according to Fiend, DM had offhandedly mentioned that we would have gotten a good ending if I didn't have a squeak about it. The good ending in question was to give Strahd an heir by impregnating one of the PCs. Art's PC was the other option, according to DM, and Art was heavily against that too, albeit for unrelated reasons that are not mine to recount. Wait, so the DM already pre-decided a good ending would just let Strahd bang and breed somebody? That's the weirdest thing ever. So apparently the good ending according to this DM is that Strahd will get to bang somebody and they'll give him a child. I can't believe people just didn't dip out. Like immediately, just instantly. And to complain about someone's squeak. Listen, You gave the consent forms. You specifically let the players fill out the consent forms to figure out what they're okay with and what they're not okay with, so that all of you can enjoy yourself and have a good time. Knowing your players' no-nos is kind of important to make sure that everybody can enjoy the session, enjoy themselves. Some people are not okay with gratuitous body horror or gratuitous body mutilations, and that's okay. You're here to have fun. You're here to have a good time. I get it's Curse of Strahd. I get it's supposed to be gritty and stuff, but going as far as trying to force some player to get pregnant by Strahd is, I feel like a fetish being ham-fisted really badly into the game for really no other reason other than DM's fetishes, I guess. I don't know who else will be into that sort of thing. DM was really pinning for that impregnation scene. Christ. Then there was the plan to kill my character. Less a plan and more of an expectation that my PC would die. Fiend explained that this optional murder house side quest was going to stress test the team and pick off the weak players, one of which was predicted to be my paladin. DM thought my PC would have been too stupid to survive based on some jokes I made about her previously. DM, as far as I could tell, just didn't like my choice of player character, and instead of talking to me about it like a normal human being, devised a stress test quest to kill my character off and force me to use my backup. DM, after I told him I'd drop in Curse of Strahd, offered to run a 1-on-1 game for me as consolation. I turned that down too. Anyway, that's the end for reals. Thank you for reading. Why play these sort of mind games, dude? Why play this sort of mind games? Why is the DM wanting to play these stupid mind games with people when they should be playing a TTRPG? There's so much nonsense happening on the side when they could be playing Curse of Strahd and just having a good time and just respecting people's boundaries. Simple as that. You really don't need a scene. You could honestly forego the scene of Strahd impregnating one of the players. Simple as that. You don't need that in a game. I don't know much about Curse of Strahd. I've never experienced Curse of Strahd. I never played Curse of Strahd. As far as I can recognize and kind of figure out from what people have said in these RPG horror stories is that Strahd is a morally ambiguous bad guy that's not really bad, but he's like a bad, you know, it's like a bad boy. He's like a bad guy, you know. He's not bad, he's bad. He's a baddie, you know. I mean, there's a whole term Strahd daddy, basically, so. But I'm pretty sure Strahd impregnating a player is not a scene that's planned out. And why is that a good ending? God, you know, bullet dodged. OP. Completely bullet dodged. Problem player is constantly complaining, leading me to feeling burnt out. Any advice? Welcome. Okay, so backstory. I run a 5e homebrew campaign for a few friends on Discord. Most of these friends I've made through online gaming over the years and have had a decent amount of fun so far. However, I have one player that will constantly complain about things happening in the sessions. Firstly, it is no secret that this player hadn't had issues in the past with another player for some odd character reasons, which to their credit were valid, but the problem player, so to speak, has tolerated him for the group as a whole. Okay, hold on a second, that's the first thing to really get through. If you have players bickering with each other out of game, out of character, that's something that needs to be taken care of immediately, because if they simply cannot get along, and the only ultimatum is to have one or the other because they both can't get along together, then you need to deal with this as a DM. If you have an issue where two players literally cannot get along outside of game at all, or even in game, you need to cut one short. Just straight up. Either they can't get along or one of them has to go. The issue started when the problem player constantly dragged down the player he had issues with RP skills, saying they were lacking, unmotivating, etc. I personally disagree with this, and knowing the player out of game and talking to them, I know they're trying their best. Also, I'm fully aware that we aren't all going to be top tier incredible role players with a perfect answer or solution to any given situation. Second, I've had numerous messages from problem player berating my style of DMing, saying that the party is too weak because they haven't had bundles of magic items, so I increased the pool of items they had dropped. Then came the complaint that the magic items I was given, 90% of them from official D&D sourcebooks, are too weak and crappy, so I crafted some more magic items. The last session, though, really was the straw that broke the camel's back. The party themselves are level 6. Some of them have pretty high-powered magic items for the level, and there's a heap of gold that they are mostly sitting on. On top of all the previous complaints that were made, two characters have had very integral character arcs flare up recently that are impacting the story. After this session, I received feedback from the problem player that if you're not a certain class, you don't get any attention. I'm gonna cut in the middle here and say that it seems like I might be jumping the gun here, but it seems like your problem player, if they're berating other players for their roleplay skills or lack thereof, or complaining to you about the other players being weak and putting them down to you, or saying that your DMing skills suck, or saying that your rewards that you're giving out aren't good enough. It sounds like you have a player that's simply complaining. If nobody else has this issue, then you have only one player that finds an issue in your game while everybody else is enjoying themselves and actually having a good time. It sounds like you found your problem player. I may be jumping the gun, but it sounds like you found your problem player that you should probably remove. Anyway, let's get to the rest of it. I've put a lot of thought and effort into creating interweaving character stories with the main story arc of the campaign, some of which have been triggered by player actions to be more prevalent in the last few sessions, but nothing seems to be good for said problem player. What advice would you give me here? Part of me doubts I'm actually doing a good job despite most of players saying that I have been. What advice could you give me for addressing the issue with a problem player? My thoughts are mentioning that they don't seem to be a good fit for the group, but part of me thinks this is too rash. Finally, one of the many reasons I haven't addressed things further is one of the other players in the group is the problem player's girlfriend, who I know enjoys the game heavily, and it worries me that if the problem player is asked to find another group, they will drag them along with them. Apologies for the long post, but again, any advice would be amazing. Right, here's my advice from you, from one DM to another. First, I would talk to the other players one-on-one and just chat with them and ask them, hey, how are you enjoying the campaign? Do you find any issues in the progression, the combat, the rewards and stuff, or the story, or are you enjoying yourself? Because as you said, most players actually really enjoy this stuff and actually have nothing but positive to say to your campaign. At least they don't bring up the same kind of issues that the problem player is bringing up. Second, you should probably ask the other players what they think about the problem player and their constant bickering, or they're causing any other issues outside of game, because you never know, maybe they're being a pain in the ass for somebody else too. But asking your players is a great way to find that out. 3, depends on how your players respond. If other players find issues that are similar to what the problem player is saying in the game, then you know what needs to be changed. But if everybody else is enjoying the game, they say they're having fun, and the problem players also may be putting them off as well, or done some other bad behavior. You can't tell with players unless they tell you. But if there are no issues with the other players and everybody else is having a good time, it is time to also ask your players, would they be okay with a problem player leaving? Regarding the girlfriend of the player, listen, sometimes there could be a situation where she might rather leave because she wants to play stuff with him, and if he's not going to be there, you know, she doesn't see a reason to bother. But just let him know ahead of time that you understand if they want to leave, but they'll always welcome the table if they want to stick around and keep playing. Because if the girlfriend genuinely likes the game and wants to keep playing, they should be allowed to, and there should be pressure by the boyfriend to try to basically bow out with them. But if she chooses to bow out on her own, there's not much you could do about it. But if what you say is true and everybody else is enjoying themselves and actually having a good time and has no issues to talk about with the campaign whatsoever, then maybe the problem is so obvious: the problem player. I understand you put quotation marks around the problem player name and stuff because you're trying to be nice and everything, but listen, some people just don't mesh well. And this guy, not only does he harp on someone else's RP skills or lack thereof and how other players aren't, useful or whatever the term he used, aren't contributing or good enough or something, and it complains about the rewards and complains about, oh, certain classes, I guess, don't get story and stuff. Then, I mean, you have your answer. But the best thing to do is talk to the other players and figure out how they feel. Once you figure that out, you can go from there. I wish nothing but the best for you, DM, and I hope things get resolved soon. And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales tomorrow. Bye-bye.